All right, guys, once you have collected your objects, you need to make sure that you go and you get your clay and have your surface all set up and ready to work on. And you'll also need your string or your floss to cut your clay. So what you want to do is you want to first unpack and take the plastic off this clay. I would stand it up so you have a thinner edge here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut like a thin piece off so we don't have to do too much rolling to thin it out. So I'm going to take my floss and wrap it around each of my hands and really kind of hold on to it tightly. And I'm going to start away from myself, and then I'm going to pull towards myself through the clay to cut a chunk of clay off to use. So I have a nice kind of thin, it's uneven of course, piece of clay. Then now I'm going to thin out and roll and make it nice and flat. So I'll cover my clay back up and put that off to the side. So the clay coming out of your bag could be a little hard, a little cold. So I would just kind of, I call this pancaking. So like I kind of pancake it out and kind of thin it a little bit. We don't want to make it too thin. We'll really even it out when we roll it, but just kind of warming it up a little bit. So when we're creating slab work, which is what we're doing, cutting a thinner piece is the way to go, so you don't have to do as much work thinning it out and rolling it out. If we're gonna make a three-dimensional form like on the wheel, we would cut like a larger chunk off. Okay, so that's kind of decent. So I'll lay that down, and hopefully you guys have found something to use as guide sticks, either some chopsticks or some stainless steel straws. I think I'm gonna stick to these guys. And so you can see that that clay is still really thick. And I actually have a length of PVC pipe that I can use, and I also have my rolling pin. Something that to be aware of is that the clay will potentially stick up just like that. So don't go too crazy with it. And I had some darker clay on it. And actually this is probably too much, so I'm gonna take my butter knife and just kind of cut some off, because we're just gonna experiment with our textures today. I'll stick that back in my bag. You gotta make sure it fits over top of your guide sticks, because if it gets to where it doesn't fit, you'll thin it out too much. So it can be a little tricky because we're just using what we can find at home. But there we go. So we have a nice thin piece of clay. Looks great. And this is where we're going to start.